You're watching a News 18 special debate. Election news from where you live.
Good evening and welcome to this live broadcast of the 2018 Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Debate. I'm Kayla Sullivan. During this busy election season, it was challenging to find a date for this event. We regret that tonight is the conclusion of the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur. We are posting this debate online for our Jewish friends and anyone else who may have been unable to watch this debate tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome Harrison High School student Seth Weaver and Jefferson High School student Shelby Lauk. They will be assisting me in asking questions tonight. Now, the two candidates for the Tippecanoe County Sheriff. Here we have Republican Jason Dumkowski and Democrat Bob Goldsmith. Bob Goldsmith has volunteered to go first. Let's start with opening statements. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Goldsmith, husband to one, father of two, graduate of Lafayette Jefferson High School here in Tippecanoe County, 21-year law enforcement officer. I'm a former correction officer, crisis negotiator, dive team member, child forensic interviewer, current Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Office Lieutenant of Detectives, and I'm your Democrat candidate for Sheriff of Tippecanoe County. I want to thank all those involved in making tonight possible. I want to thank you, sir, for agreeing to this. I know they jumping through some hoops with some other candidates, but I don't look at this as a debate. What I look at this, I look at it as a job interview. We are interviewing for a job that not only affects the Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department, but all of Tippecanoe County. Tonight, you're probably going to hear some terms like proven leadership, community outreach, opioids, lifelong mental health, and future. It is up to you and the people at home to decide who you feel would be the better sheriff. One that is the most approachable, has the best character, highest integrity, the one you feel has, the most consistency. I'm the one that was born and raised here. I'm the one that has witnessed our community evolve for the last 40 plus years. I know where Hudson Street is in Clarks Hill, Rose and Romney, Jefferson and West Point, Clinton Street in Americus, Church Street in Colburn, Ricks Drive in Dayton, Indiana Street in Otterburn, Union Road in Buck Creek, Colfax in Lafayette, and East Oak Street in West Lafayette. You want me to continue? I know where Jewett is in Battleground and Henry and Shadeland. You see, my department not only has to be familiar with Lafayette and West Lafayette, folks, we've got to be familiar with all of Tippecanoe County and perform the functions of our Sheriff's Department, which is very, very different than a city police department. I've been listening and taking notes for 20 years. I have a plan for mental health for first responders. I have an idea for a child sexual and physical abuse unit based on my experience as a detective. I have many ideas for community policing. I personally have talked with Dr. Hanback of the Tippecanoe School Corporation about how our department can continue to work with the Tippecanoe School Corporation to make sure your kids are safe when they go to school. In order to make all my plans and its components reality, I need everyone in the department and the community to get involved. My leadership style is being honest, trustworthy, leading by example, teamwork, and putting all people in a position to succeed, and asking people to hold me accountable. I will be in charge of the day-to-day operations, the hiring process, and the promotions. I'm not going to leave it up to my second command or anyone else. I will be working with them together to make Tippecanoe County a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. I am asking those that I work with and in the community to call me out if I don't do what I say I'm going to do. We will have a transparent department that proudly works side by side with the citizens and all agencies of Tippecanoe County. I do not have any other political aspirations beyond the office of sheriffs. So citizens nor employees have to worry about me doing things for political gain or leaving to achieve future goals. At the end of the day, I promise to leave your sheriff's department better than the day I come into office. I thank you for coming. Now let's get to the interview.
Jason Dumkowski.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Harrison High School for hosting this important civic event, and thank you to all in attendance here this evening and to those watching at home. I'm Jason Dumkowski, and I want to be your next sheriff. I have nearly 25 years of law enforcement experience in Tippecanoe County. The last 11 years as Chief of Police, leading an 80-plus member law enforcement agency, overseeing a $7.5 million annual budget. My wife Christy and I are both proud Purdue University graduates, and we love this county. It's where we are raising our 4 children. Tippecanoe County is where I have learned to be a law enforcement leader, the kind of leader our sheriff's office needs in these challenging times. I'm running to restore leadership to the office of sheriff. Leadership at a time when our county is at a crossroads. Over the last 4 years, we've seen an increase in violent crime across our county and major quantities of dangerous drugs arriving from outside our county. Our jail population peaked last week with over 570 inmates, which is nearly double the jail population just 4 years ago. Tippecanoe County is at a crossroads. We must change our approach. We must implement new, innovative solutions. I've learned many lessons along the way, from my time on the streets as a young officer to my days at the FBI Academy in Quantico, to really, from my experience, has taught me that relationships and partnerships are the foundation of problem solving in law enforcement. Our local, state, and federal law enforcement leaders must partner more than ever before, and our sheriff's office can no longer afford to be the only local agency not participating in these joint efforts. Joint teams like our long-standing Tippecanoe County Drug Task Force Detective Squad and our new Tippecanoe County Highway Drug Patrol Team. Our sheriff's office does not assign deputies to either of these 2 multi-agency drug teams, as we're in the midst of a dangerous drug crisis. That must change. Just last week, I was at our monthly law enforcement leaders meeting, a meeting our current sheriff does not attend, and our drug task force commander reported to the chiefs, prosecutor, FBI, and state police that our new highway drug patrol team, consisting of LPD and WLPD officers, and a canine, of course, was the most successful drug team in Indiana. There are 7 such teams across the state now. This new drug patrol team has tallied hundreds of arrests, removed kilos of meth, cocaine, and heroin from our streets. Results. Just imagine what this new drug team will do when, as your next sheriff, we assign sheriff deputies and another canine to this team. And we assign deputies to other task force units, like our Drug Task Force Detective Squad, and a new sex crimes unit. Partnerships. As your next sheriff, we will work more closely with our fire departments, emergency management, and our schools, and we will restore leadership to the office of sheriff. I'm Jason Dumkowski, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, candidates. For the question portion of this debate, we will alternate who answers first. You will each have 2 minutes to respond, after which you will have 30 seconds for rebuttal in the same order. Question number 1 goes to Bob Goldsmith. What divisions in the department, such as patrol dispatch, correction officers, transport officers, or bailiffs, do you feel need additional staff? With limited funding, what is your priority for staffing? Begin.
Well, after sitting through the budget hearings, I'd have to say the priority and having worked back there are our correction officers. As was stated, our jail is exploding. It was 586 today, and when you are, I believe, at 85% capacity, you're considered over capacity, which is what we are. Those people come in and do a job every day that a lot of people don't want to do. I personally have done it. I was a supervisor back there, and I can tell you the stress that's on those folks is overwhelming. They absolutely have to have more people. The reason being, that's our number 1 priority as a sheriff's department, is that jail. We need more people in there. If we're going to get sued, that's where it's coming from. Big checks being written out of that jail. It's not going to be on a traffic stop or something like that. It's coming from the jail. So personally speaking, having worked back there and working there every day for over 20 years, it's our jail. That's where we need more people.
Okay, I'm going to restate question 1. What divisions in the department, such as patrol dispatch, correction officers, transport officers, or bailiffs, do you feel need additional staff? With limited funding, what is your priority for staffing? Jason Demkowski.
Thank you. I certainly would leverage some of the relationships that we have with other agencies to augment services, certainly in patrol, in the areas that we work together in our detective division, certainly in task force units. Synergy does come from working together like that. But in those relationships, the jail is the #1 priority where we do need more resources. I mentioned just in my opening statement, the jail population has nearly doubled in the last 4 years, and we haven't added staff appropriately. You know, in my travels here over the last month, I visited 6 jails across the state of Indiana, from Evansville to Northwest Indiana and around the donut of Indianapolis. And I quickly saw that our jail is in need of a tremendous amount of not only personnel services, but also we need to do a better job of programs in our jail, specifically in the area of treating drug addicts and community therapy in that area, but also in mental health issues and programs in the jail. And it's really a holistic approach, but that jail is in need of an overhaul when it comes to more resources and certainly more staff.
Bob Goldsmith, you now have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Well, answering the question is where I'd put more resources. Like I said, it's the jail. And I can tell you that right now we have 53 full-time corrections staff, but of those, there's 50 full-time jail deputies. We have part-time deputies, or jail deputies that are in there. But when you sit down and look at it, that's about 10 inmates per jail deputy. And it just doesn't work. There's no way. You walk back there in a pod and there's 90 inmates for one officer. When I worked back there, there was 60, I believe, on each side. They've double bunked. It's not only stressful on the staff, it's stressful on the inmates, and that carries over to the staff. They take that stuff home with them, they come back, they go home, just back and forth.
Jason Demkowski, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Let me be clear. The safety and security of Tippecanoe County is priority 1. And road patrol should not be second fiddle to resources and issues in our jail. There are some organizational changes that we could certainly implement to help our officers on the road as well, to free them up from having to be at the hospital for so long and other errands that they have to run for the jail. And we have a plan to do that and free them up.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to ask question number 2. As the jail administrator, do you lean toward jail as punishment or rehabilitation? Which programs for inmates would you cancel? Which ones would you expand or start? This question is for Jason Demkowski.
Thank you. Just a couple weeks ago, I spent a good part of a day in Boone County at their jail with their sheriff. And in doing so, I sat down with about 15 inmates in orange scrubs and really in the middle of the jail and talked for about an hour. And this group of inmates were in a special program that was for drug treatment and for a therapeutic community. And they told me stories about how that program has changed their life and how it will change their life when they're out of the jail. So programs like that, I would certainly advocate for. I will bring that program and others like it to our jail. And jails have a captive audience. Let's provide solutions to people in crisis while they're being held in our jail. We need to do a better job also of keeping drugs out of our jail, and that's good old-fashioned police work, using canines in the jail as well. And certainly staffing. But some other programs that we certainly need to focus on is a mental health program, a really professional services in our jail, and hopefully the goal will be to keep people out of our jail, reduce that population, and save the taxpayer dollar from people in and out of our jail. That revolving door of addiction is a major increase of why we have 586
Yep.
today people in our jail in a county of less than 200,000 people. That has to change. Programs, helping people in crisis and saving the tax dollar in the long run is what I plan to bring to the Tippecanoe County Jail.
Okay, again, I will restate the question. The question is, as the jail administrator, do you lean toward jail as punishment or rehabilitation? Which programs for inmates would you cancel? Which ones would you expand or start? Bob Goldsmith?
Again, having worked back there, it's punishment in the sense that those people, when you talk to them, they know they're caught. They're doing their time, let them do their time. Treat them like human beings and treat them with respect, and in turn they treat you with respect. As far as the mental health and addiction treatment, we already offer a program, and it's my understanding it went to the highest bidder. But those are programs and things that we need to learn from the other agencies around the state, neighboring counties, to see what benefits us and what's going to help us. I totally agree with, we have this revolving door of addiction and people coming in and out, and you see generation after generation. Understand, having been born and raised here, there's people back in that jail that I went to school with. There's people back there that I used to run around with. I've went back there and talked to them. What can we do for you? What can I do for you? It's a lifestyle change. And once they leave our jail, it's really hard for us to control the peers that they run around with. And that's what we need to do is give them the tools while they're there. And that's a lot of time, that is communication, that's education. Again, it's treatment programs. This stuff's evolving every day. There's some new hot treatment program all the time. Somebody's always coming up with something that's wonderful. But I can tell you the Trinity Mission Outreach is there, and it's free. It's a 12-month program. You just got to go in, and I know there's some local leaders that have been down there to talk to them. All right?
All right, in this last rebuttal part, I want you both to answer, do you lean toward punishment or rehabilitation, specifically in the answer? Can we do that?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so 30 seconds, Jason Domkowski.
Thank you. I wrote that down. And it's difficult because we got to remember, a good portion of our jail people are in there for pre-trial. They haven't been convicted of a crime. So how do you install punishment when you have people that can't bond? And that's our criminal justice system. We are waiting for them to go have their day in court. So that's a tricky question when it comes to punishment for people that have not been convicted of a crime. I would rather, regardless of the reason that you're there, I would invest in rehab, and certainly for people addicted to drugs. Thank you.
Bob Goldsmith.
It has to be rehabilitation, but it's in a sense, it's a glorified timeout for an adult, is what it is. But you have to have programs available, and they have to have people they can reach out to when they're ready to make that life change. And again, we just have to do our research and work together to figure out what those programs are that will benefit us other than the ones that we currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Goldsmith, you have question 3 first. What can you do to increase security to protect schools from intruders with an intent to cause harm to students and staff, as well as from other students with the same intent to harm others?
Again, I've talked to Dr. Hanback personally, and it would be nice. If it was up to me, folks, we'd write a check right now to put 19 officers in the schools. It cost $1.8 million the first year. But I'm all for it, but I don't write the checks. So what we have to do is continue to work with Steve Tobias and Dr. Hanback at making sure that your kids and your family and friends and neighbors and everybody goes to school safely. That's my goal. We can train together with staff, local fire departments, train them on how to identify when people are carrying guns. There's the way they wear their clothes, it's the way their clothes hang. But again, it goes back to communications, and we're both going to say this. It's relationships and it's communication. It's just who does it better than the other one, who's the most approachable. But we have to get out there in the schools. The sheriff has to get out there in the schools and work with those people and the SROs. We have 2, I would put them up against anybody in the state SROs. Bar none, they're the best. I work with them on a daily basis. I talk to them outside of work. They are great people. We need to continue the program that we have, and that is what the schools want. I'm not going to tell Dr. Hanback how to run a school. He's not going to tell me how to run the sheriff's department, but together, we will work together to make sure your kids and your families go to school safe, and they're safe when they get there. People talk about metal detectors. We just learned today at the same conference that creates a line of people outside. I don't know if that's the safest thing. But we have to keep our minds open and learn from these events that happen. And that's what we'll do. When there is an incident in another school, we'll read up, we'll educate ourselves, and we'll plan, and hopefully we never have to go through that here in Tippecanoe County. But right now we have deputies that stop in the schools unannounced. Sometimes there's one that stops into the school 5 times a day. Sometimes there aren't any. And the next day there's 6. You never know when they're going to be there. It's really hard to plan to do harm to your children when they have no idea who's going to be there. But remember, I would write the check myself for $1.8 million the first year if we could put an officer in every school.
Thank you. I'll restate the question for Mr. Domkowski. What can you do to increase security to protect schools from intruders with an intent to cause harm to students and staff, as well as from other students with the same intent to harm others?
Thank you, Seth. Our active shooter response plan at West Lafayette was tested on January 21st, 2014. We reported an active shooter on the Purdue campus at the electrical engineering building. That's a day I'll never forget. As I responded to the scene, the first thing that I did was contact our schools, our nearby schools, and ask that they be placed on lockdown. And really, it does boil down to having that plan and having those relationships established. I worked as a school safety officer for 4 years earlier in my career. And the lessons learned from that day for me was that active shooter training with other agencies is a must. We can't operate in silos. Second, we absolutely have to train with our fire departments. It's something that was instilled in me years ago when I was at the FBI Academy. I had heard of this philosophy of a holistic public safety approach, but as it worked its way back here to Indiana, we just started training with our fire department several years ago and having that whole plan. As what I would do differently as your sheriff is I would absolutely train with our volunteer fire departments as they would have to respond to 19 different schools in our county. Those are 19 different plans, and those have to be tabletopped and those have to be exercised, and that training is a key ingredient to protecting our schools better. And the SROs, the school resource officers, 2 for 19 schools, that's a start. We can do a much better job than that. We can leverage resources between the school corporation and the county and start implementing a real safety plan, because it's the #1 deterrent. The #1 deterrent for an active shooter is having an armed police officer in that building and having the ability to take action when needed.
Thank you. Mr. Goldsmith, your rebuttal.
It's kind of hard to rebut when I think we agree with everything. And I remember that day at Purdue as well, because myself and another detective got to interview everybody that was in that classroom when that happened. I guess, again, going back to the differences between departments and having worked there, and he works in the city, is they're right next to each other. Response is a lot quicker, but we absolutely have to train together. We have to train together. There is a safety plan in effect for the schools, and our SROs go through that with them, and they go through the staff, so it's already implemented. Could it be tweaked? Probably. We need to learn from the newer events.
Thank you. Mr. Domkowski.
Thank you. This summer, I was asked by the governor's office to help provide safety talking points for the governor's report on school safety as the president of the Indiana Chiefs of Police Association. And in that role, I worked with the Noblesville chief as they just had their shooting on May 25th of this past year. And using those resources. Today, my opponent and I attended a meeting where that chief from Noblesville presented to all of the school superintendents and many officers from our county on lessons learned that day. And those resources are important.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I'll now be reading the 4th question. This is for Mr. Domkowski. In regards to community safety, should the Sheriff's Office monitor the social media accounts of local teens?
Thank you, Shelby. Hot seat on that one. So I'm the father of 4 teenagers, and that's always an issue, even in our own home, of the balance between privacy and the balance between letting kids be kids. I do believe that parents do have an obligation to monitor that. not the police, not the sheriff's office, but the parents at home. And I think schools have an obligation there as well. There's a lot of crossover there. We're in a new era. We're in a new age. Technology is growing faster than our ability to keep up. And we, as an agency, do monitor social media accounts for criminal activity, for investigations. And that certainly is true for where I police in West Lafayette. We have a population of 40,000 people under the age of 25. And it's an important element. Our detectives stay very busy doing that. But I would not advocate for the sheriff's office or any other law enforcement agency to be monitoring the accounts of our teenage population. I might be scared what I might find. But my point is, that's for parents to do, and that's where I would place that onus. Thank you.
I'll now restate the question for Mr. Goldsmith. In regards to community safety, should the sheriff's office monitor the social media accounts of local teens?
No. Because here's why. We don't need to be doing that. We don't have time to do that. When you build relationships with the people in your schools, you coach these kids. Myself, I cook for a lot of these people. You build relationships, they inundate you with information from social media. Staff member here at Harrison High School came to me and didn't know anything about the apps these kids use. I'm very familiar with these apps with the job that I do. So instead of just me doing it, I reached out to our school resource officers and I said, hey, we need a plan. So we created a plan, brought Ashley Greeley on board, and we now have a presentation that we're building on currently, and we put it on in the schools. Kids can come, parents can come, staff can come. We've done it at churches. It's continuing to grow. We're getting to the south side of the county here soon. But it's just educating, and it's building those relationships, and then a kid comes up and says, hey, so-and-so's wanting to do something bad at the school. Our school resource officers are the first line of defense, and they're on top of it. And it's relationships. And we have those. Do we catch everything? No. But I feel good when my daughter goes to school. I feel good when my wife teaches in the schools. Our schools are safe. Could they be safer? Probably. Is monitoring the social media like we're a different country? No, it's not going to work. And I don't think anybody wanted to sit in front of a computer and look at it all day long. But absolutely, I don't agree with that, not at all. We need to continue to educate people on the apps the kids are using and what they're using them for and what they're putting on there. And we will continue to do that, and it'll continue to grow and evolve because there's always a new app. Check the App Store.
Thank you. Mr. Domkowski, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. I do think that it is a responsibility of a law enforcement agency to provide programs and to certainly weave in social media into those programs, best practices, lessons learned. We have done some of that at our own agency, and I would advocate for those learning opportunities to help parents monitor those accounts and again, put that back on our parents and hopefully provide information for them to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Goldsmith?
Did you rebut when he agreed with me? No, we need to continue to do that. It's just ongoing another 30 seconds to get your point across. Relationships, we have to have them with our students and we have to have them with our parents. I'd encourage anyone to sit down with your kid and ask them what they're using. I really would, because if you don't, there's somebody out there that's willing to do it. I promise you, I've talked to them. Education.
On to question number 5. Would you honor an ICE detainer request for a person whose criminal custody has ended? Why or why not?
Is that for me?
You know what? Number 5 is for... Yes, it's for you.
Would I honor that? To be honest with you, that hasn't been something I've experienced. I would work with our jail commander, the county attorney, and the prosecutor's office. If their criminal time's expired, we'd have to look at it. If they're not supposed to be here and there's an order to hold them, we would hold them. But it's really hard for me to speak on that because honestly, I haven't had that situation. So to stand up here and tell you something just to tell you something and spend 2 minutes is going to be a waste of all our time. It's something I'd have to educate myself on. What I've learned over the years is the day you come to work and you think you know it all is the day you don't go home. So to stand up here and act like I know the answer to this, I'm just going to be honest with you folks, I do not. I would do the research and I'd figure out what's right. I wouldn't hold somebody if they're not supposed to be being held.
Thank you. I'm going to restate the question for Jason Domkowski. Would you honor an ICE detainer request for a person whose criminal custody has ended? Why or why not?
I would absolutely follow the law. If that's a valid order from a judge to hold that person, the law in Indiana is that we shall assist our federal partners. That's a state law, and I would follow that law. We would have to look into the matter to see if that, again, that is a lawful order. But your job as sheriff, a constitutional position, is to follow and enforce the laws of the state of Indiana. And we do have a law in Indiana that does require our local law enforcement to partner with when requested and to actually enforce laws from our federal government when we are requested to. And a valid order like that, it's pretty easy for me. I would follow the law.
Mr. Goldsmith, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I don't need to say 30 seconds to say remember partnerships and educating each other and working together. We just did that. I mean, I've worked in there for over 20 years, and I can tell you I've never had that happen. He's educated me on that. That's not something I've worked in a long time. We have a jail commander that's doing a wonderful job. And I think surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you in some cases and currently in that is what you have to do. Again, I'm going to work together with the people and not just stand there and dictate what's going on. I totally agree. It's a court order. It's a law. We have to enforce it.
Okay. Mr. Domkowski, you have 30 seconds.
This is an issue that is presenting itself more and more as we address cultural issues and political issues, I would suppose. But you don't have to look at the issue from either of those angles. As a sheriff, it's very easy. You follow the law. And that's what I would do, and in a lawful order from the federal government, we would enforce that. Thank you.
Okay, this next question is for Jason Domkowski. I'm back on track now. As sheriff, how would you address the county's drug epidemic, both in the jail and in the community?
Where do I start?
I don't know. You want this?
Enforcement, treatment, and prevention. This is something I've been working on for a long time. Leveraging partnerships through the enforcement area, task force units, local, state, and federal, our Tippecanoe County Drug Task Force, a new Tippecanoe County Highway Drug Patrol team that is canine-based. This is one of maybe the major problem facing our community right now. And really, when you talk about working together, I'll tell you a story really quick. I've been the chief of police for 11 years now, nearly 11. And for a number of years, we get at our law enforcement leaders meeting monthly an update from our drug task force commander. That used to last about 10 to 15 minutes. And we'd move on to another topic, they would leave, and we would discuss other issues. That update now from our drug task force commander, that takes about 45 minutes to an hour. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach. We have to get a hold of this crisis. We have to work better than we ever have together, and we have to leverage our resources. I can do that as sheriff. I can bring those relationships together, and we can put a hammer on enforcing drug laws in our community. I'll wait for rebuttal to get into some of the, I got 30 seconds here, treatment. Professional drug treatment programs in our jails. That goes along with mental health services as well, and we need to stop that revolving door of addiction. We've gone to 500 plus, nearly 600 people in our jail now, and just 4 years ago, about half that. We have to get a handle on this drug crisis. Thank you.
Bob Goldsmith, I will restate the question. As sheriff, how would you address the county's drug epidemic, both in the jail and in the community?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, we will have somebody start on the drug task force on January 2nd, unless that person wants to work January 1st, which is a holiday. So we will put somebody on that. That's a promise. That's a hot topic. It's a promise. There needs to be somebody there. As far as the drug epidemic and what we're doing, I can tell you from where I work every day, our evidence room is packed with drugs. Our men and women are on the street every day making traffic stops and taking drugs off the streets. They're not coming into work not wanting to take drugs off the streets, which I'm sure every officer in this county does. Lafayette as well as West Lafayette, they do a tremendous job. As far as the drug crisis and this opioid crisis we face, folks, we're either burying them or we're putting them in prison. So we're screwing up. We've got to figure out a program that can work. We've tried everything. We continue to try everything. There'll be new programs that evolve, but we have to work together not only as law enforcement agencies, we have to work together as a community to steer these people in the right directions. I said it earlier, when these people go out into the community after they're in jail or from a traffic stop onto something else, we can't control the people that they're running around with, their peers. We can't control that. The only thing we can do is listen to them. Zig Ziglar wrote a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the number one thing people like to do the most is talk about themselves. Take time and talk to these people. Talk to them. Learn their pains. What makes them not go to sleep at night? And then you'll learn a little bit about them and you might be able to direct them somewhere. But that's what we have to do. It's getting out of the cars. We've talked about community policing together and outside of this, but we have a drug problem. It's not a secret. But we're going in every day trying to take drugs off the streets. The best way to do that, our drug task force does an outstanding job. I've worked with them a few times. It's a lot of fun. We will have somebody on that task force. And if we can, we'll have even more.
Thank you. Jason Demkowski, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I touched on enforcement. I touched on treatment. Need to touch on prevention. Innovative classroom programs for our youth. And alternative programs that promote healthy choices for our high school students and our college students. That's a key component here. We can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing over and over again. I'm a member of our local opioid task force for the last 2 years. I sit on the Attorney General's task force for prescription drug abuse. I know these issues, and I know we can do a lot better job than we're doing in the area of enforcement, treatment, and prevention. Thank you.
I guess I'm going to go with the rebuttal.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the HIT team that he speaks of. I do believe they're doing a great job. They're out on the road, they're stopping vehicles that in a sense are traveling through our county. We have a manpower crisis. There's probably 4 or 5 guys working the road right now, and if you had somebody call and say they needed help and it said I can't get to them because they're out doing traffic stops on the interstate, stopping drugs that aren't stopping here, personally doesn't make sense to me. It'd make more sense to continue to build the drug task force that's taking drugs off the streets that are here, and then they work with other agencies to prevent them from coming. That's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Next question. If elected, what is your biggest fear as sheriff?
My biggest fear as sheriff. One of our officers dies. That is my biggest fear. You open the news every day and there's somebody on there, somebody's been ambushed. That is my biggest fear. We've had officers shot at. We've had officers that have shot people. There's a gentleman sitting in this lobby tonight. I got called out at 2 in the morning. He was shot at. That's my biggest fear. I don't want to lose anybody. I don't want either department to lose anybody. That is my biggest fear as sheriff. That's it.
Jason Demkowski, what is your biggest fear as sheriff?
Well, I would have to echo a bit of my opponent's response. Being the head of a law enforcement agency for 11 years, I've been woken up in the middle of the night for our officers hurt. And that hits home. I got woken up in the middle of the night one night in 2011 when my own brother was hurt. Lafayette police detective. And those hit home very, very close to home, actually. But also having to deliver death notices. This is a sensitive subject right now for our young people in the community, and having to go to a home in the middle of the night when there's something we could have done, something we should have seen, some sign, some indicator. I think we can do a better job in that area of educating our officers. We've come a long way. We've had a lot of training when it comes to crisis intervention for our police officers, but as we look at some of the challenges that face us with active shooters in schools, that is one of my biggest fears, is to have to respond to a school shooting. And that really is where I plan to pour some resources in to better prepare the Tippecanoe County School Corporation for an event that I hope never happens. But we can do a better job as we prepare our officers for those times that, again, we hope that never happens. We have to do a better job there, and I'm confident that we will provide more resources for our schools. Thank you.
Bob Goldsmith, you have 30 seconds.
I think you used the term echo a minute ago, right? That's where I'm at with this rebuttal. I mean, that is something, you don't want to lose anybody. I can't tell you how many death notifications I've made, as I'm sure my opponent's done the same thing. It is gut-wrenching, especially when it's a child. I've covered a car crash. We're in Clinton County, and I got there, and there's a baby that's up on top of the semi. That just tears you up. Thank goodness a trooper friend of mine said, "I'll deal with this." We just had our son.
Jason Dubkowski?
The rebuttal part of that is really simple. We need to focus our officers' efforts in some of preventing any of those tragedies. And I think the real opportunity there for us is with our young people, and to train our officers so that they're able to notice those signs, notice those symptoms, and read those red flags, and making sure that we are doing all of our due diligence as to not have to knock on another door for a death notification. Thank you.
All right, let's lighten the mood, and we do have time for a bonus question, so that's good news.
A bonus question?
What is one idea from your opponent that you would consider implementing? Jason Dubkowski, you get to go first.
You want this?
All right.
Here, you can read my notes. You can use my glasses.
Look, my opponent has been in the sheriff's office for a very long time, and one thing that he has brought to the focus is mental health services for our employees. It's something that I started down that road about 10 years ago, so I've almost not paid attention to it as much. We have an EAP program in the city. We've augmented that with a chaplaincy program for our officers. And one of those chaplains happens to be a clinical psychotherapist, Dr. Will Miller. So I take that for granted that we have that for our officers. I've had to send officers to those programs numerous times in my career, both for personal matters and for on-duty incidents. And I think that's a focus now more than ever, as we talk about mental health for the community, that we remember the mental health of our public safety officers that are serving on the front lines. I think it's commendable that we're talking about that, and I know he brought that up, because at the end of the day, that bond between law enforcement and our community is that street officer. And we ask them to do so much more than we ever have, that we have to take care of them as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bob Goldsmith, what is one idea from your opponent that you would consider implementing?
We have this, it went away, it's coming back, it's the canines. I mean, who doesn't have a dog voice? Everybody loves dogs. They're a tremendous tool. Yes, we started running those dogs through our jail once my opponent said something. But again, you can look at that positive or negative. The positive spin is that we're learning from each other. But one of the issues from that's the stuff we're seeing in our jail that dogs wouldn't detect. But no, getting those dogs out there and handlers and working with the drug task force, with everybody, there to protect our guys, just another tool. They're incredible. Those dogs are incredible. And if you ever have the opportunity to put the bite sleeve on, I'm just going to say don't do it. The one I did it on, it bit through there. But that's the idea I would take from him. Again, we're already doing that. It's a very slow process, I've noticed. But no, we have to have dogs. They're wonderful. I could go on and on about dogs, but I'm not going to do my dog voice for you.
Is there anything else that you want to add? I know it's not really a rebuttal kind of question, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'll take the issue on canines. That really augments our frontline services. It's close to my heart. I talked about my brother earlier. He's here in the audience tonight. He was a canine officer for 15 years. So I learned a lot from watching how that not only balances things in our favor on the streets and in the community's favor, and the actual backup that it provides for all of our officers, but then the at-home aspect too. And it's a relationship, and that dog does become part of the family. So I'm glad to hear that. The Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Office used to lead the way in canines for our community for years.
Time is up. Thank you, though.
Thank you. We'll get back there. We'll get back there again. Thanks.
30 seconds.
She's going to give you another bonus. Mental health. He talked about that, and he talked about Dr. Miller, and I'm sure Dr. Miller is a wonderful man, but if that happens, I want to make sure we're getting the type of treatment that we need that's been proven. That's EMDR. And I assume Dr. Miller's on board with that, and understanding that after things happen repeatedly, there's traumatic stress and we need help, and that's the treatment that we need.
Okay,
I'm doing it before she puts that sign up.
Well, I do have one last question, and it's my favorite as a journalist.
This will be great.
What does a transparent sheriff's office look like? Explain. Bob Goldsmith?
No. Transparent sheriff's office. We've talked about this, and it's part of my plan. We've got to work with the media, and we've got to work with the community, and we need to get information to you as quick as we possibly can, the information that we can. We learned today with the school shooting incident in Noblesville. The best thing they said they did was notify the parents, if you haven't heard from us, your child's fine. Open door policy. We have to do this. It's a must. People need to be able to approach us. The freedom to come into our department and make an appointment and schedule with us. I mean, I know this process is getting us to do things with this campaign, but I found it so much easier just to tell people, where are you at, and I will come meet you and talk to you face to face. Otherwise, we're sitting there behind a screen. But transparent, we need to be open. We need to open about the incidents that are taking place and releasing the information that people are asking for. This Public Information Act and releasing that, we have to do those things. It's a must, and we will do it.
Okay.
I'm not going to let her put it up again.
I'm going to repeat this question for Jason Domkowski. What does a transparent sheriff's office look like? Explain.
Kayla, how did I know you'd ask this question, right?
That's right there.
Transparency. It's a culture change for an agency. 10 years ago, nearly 11 now, when I became chief of police, we were not very transparent. And we worked hard in that area to change the culture of empowering our officers to speak with the media, but training them first on what they need to provide and what issues they need to address. And then building that culture of openness, transparency, and accountability. We were the first agency in Indiana to install body cameras on our officers. Back in 2012, we started that program. Full implementation by 2014. Just happened the same month that Ferguson, Missouri exploded across our country. We had body cameras on our officers. Access to information through a designated point of contact, a public information officer. We've had a tremendous amount of success with that. I know the media here tonight all know who to contact when there's an incident, an issue, a piece of information that's needed in a timely manner at the West Lafayette Police Department. Community policing practices, modern community policing practices, are a measure of accountability. Meeting with neighborhood associations, meeting with key stakeholders in the community, our NAACP, making sure that we are representative of all facets. And that is a measure of accountability and transparency as well. And then lastly, I would say making sure that your agency has the best policies and practices available. I'm proud to say that we went through that process and we are an accredited agency with the state of Indiana. I think there's only 12 or 13 where you have, you go through your manual and you make sure those are the best policies and practices that are acceptable by law and by our profession. And it's a process, but it makes us more open and accountable than ever before.
Thank you. And now we will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. Bob Goldsmith.
Transparent, we just, like he's saying, we have to be open. We have body cameras, we have cameras in our vehicles. We have to release the information to the public in a timely manner that we're allowed to release, and we don't put a case in jeopardy, if you will. I've mentioned, I've talked with you folks about a public information officer. We don't have that. It's call in and basically phone a cop, and whoever's there gets the call, but we will have a designated person to meet with the media on a regular basis.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
We work for the citizens. And I know at times in a history of our profession, agencies have at times developed an us versus them mentality. We're living in a new modern era. And we have to be more interactive with our public than we ever have been. And that requires us to be better trained than we ever have been. And that culture that you instill in an organization certainly opens up that transparency and accountability in ways that are unforeseen. Thank you.
All right, it's time for my favorite part of every criminal trial I cover, the closing statements. We'll start with Bob Goldsmith.
Thank you to all those involved in tonight's job interview. I appreciate everybody coming out, I really do. Thank you to everyone. Well, now that you've heard from both of us in this type of fashion, it's time for everyone to hear and at home to continue to educate yourselves about us. I want you to look at our social media. I want you to stop us and ask us questions. Talk to people we work with. Do everything you can to make an educated decision when voting begins October 10th. You can't begin to know all that we have done in our careers or the type of people we are in 60 minutes. It's impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department is a good department. We have hardworking men and women that come in every day and they get the job done. They want to be put in a position to succeed, and that's what I want to do as the sheriff. Our deputies will get out of their cars to make positive connections in the community, talk to the kids, adults, and discuss the issues, and learn to communicate so we live, work, and raise a family in a safe community. I will meet with the prosecutor, chiefs of police, school administrators, and many other agencies and organizations to make sure your Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department is doing all they can for you. I will oversee the day-to-day operations. For example, right now we have a manpower issue. I am another man that can get out there and get the job done. I will be hands-on in the department and the community. I have been for years, and I will continue to do so. It sounds like a tough task, but it's me. It's who I am. Ask my family. I've been doing this for years. I can't do all this if I'm absent, or I leave someone else to run the day-to-day operations of the department. That will be me. It will be me working side by side with the men and women of the Tippecanoe County Sheriff's Department to make your county safe. Our employees, they're going to be promoted based on merit and hard work. Putting people in position to succeed is what must be done, and empowering the community for positive change will help us move toward a better Tippecanoe County. Earlier, I spoke about words you would hear tonight, and you heard some of those. But I challenge you to do your research. I may not have been afforded the opportunities for training that my opponent has. It just hasn't happened for me. But what I have done is I've taken advantage of the training I have received and the knowledge of this community that comes with having been born and raised here and spending 45 years of my life here. Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, if you talk to me outside of these walls, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear just to win your vote. I will be consistent because I have always been told it's easier to remember the truth than to remember a lie. I've been interviewing and interrogating people for years, and what drives me crazy are inconsistencies. Inconsistencies by politicians is the reason I decided to run for sheriff now. I'm not a politician, folks. I'm a cop, and I'm a good one. This election process will end soon, and when it does, I will still have my integrity. I will know that in the end, I wasn't telling groups of people what they wanted to hear just to win their vote. I was telling the people the truth and things that I know can be done, not can't be done, but what can be done by our department based on the experience I have having worked there for 20 plus years.
Thank you. Your time is up. Now, Jason Domkowski.
Thank you. Tippecanoe County is a growing and prosperous community. Who wouldn't want to be us? But we are experiencing some growing pains. Dangerous drugs and violent crime are on the rise in our county. Our jail is maxed out. We are at a crossroads. Do we build more jails? It's not my first choice. Do we keep going down the same path as crime increases and our county jail swells with more and more people addicted to drugs? I believe the good people of Tippecanoe County deserve new, innovative solutions and fresh perspectives to these quality of life issues that are hurting our community. We must stop the flow of dangerous drugs into our county with new law enforcement efforts and partnerships. We must end the revolving door of addiction in and out of our jail by implementing professional drug treatment services and mental health services for people in crisis in our jail. We must embrace innovative programs for drug prevention for our youth, better protect our schools, implement modern policing, community policing programs and practices to strengthen the bond between law enforcement officers and our growing community. At my time at the FBI Academy, I learned that leadership transcends. You see, the sheriff's office is not about R's and D's. It's about law enforcement. It's about public safety. And this election is about who is best equipped to lead our county as we find ourselves at these crossroads. Experience matters. I will restore leadership to the sheriff's office, just as I did over 10 years ago for a challenged police department, by investing in world-class training for the dedicated men and women of our sheriff's office, and by setting high standards, realistic expectations for delivering exceptional law enforcement service to the citizens of Tippecanoe County. I ask that you place your trust in my vision and my plan to lead our sheriff's office in these challenging times. I'm Jason Domkowski, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, candidates. Well, that concludes our general election debate for Tippecanoe County Sheriff. On behalf of News 18, the League of Women Voters, the Wabash Area Lifetime Learning Association, don't forget to come out and vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you for joining us, and have a great night.